Welcome to My Therapist is Out. Each episode, we talk with a therapist from Open Space Therapy Collective or LGBT community members about mental health and building community. I'm your host, Renae Johnson, licensed therapist and founder of Open Space Therapy Collective, where we are your hub for queer and trans mental health care. As we dive into today's topic, please keep in mind that this is a mental health podcast. We will talk about sensitive and difficult issues that are not appropriate for all audiences. Please take care while listening.
Kristen, it's so good to see you.
You too. Hi.
So today we're going to dive into trauma and dance therapy. So Kristen is a dance movement therapist and has been in practice since 2013 and specializes a lot in trauma. And our group practice specializes specifically in working with queer and trans folks. So there's a huge overlap here with trauma. So before we dive in, Kristen, can you give us like a brief overview of what dance movement therapy is?
Yeah, so our current definition from the American Dance Therapy Association is dance movement therapy is the psychotherapeutic use of movement to promote emotional, social, cognitive, and physical integration of the individual. And I feel like that's a really fancy way of saying that we use movement to help you integrate the things that need integrating and to help you feel better.
Yeah, it is a fancy way of saying that, which I do like. One of the things we hear from clients a lot is like, oh, I don't need to dance. That I'm not a dancer. And the name is a little bit misleading, right? Because a lot of what you do is this really deep body work.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to preface that, like, I'm not going to get up and have you learn choreography and I'm not going to make you do interpretive dance. It is the movement that comes from you. It is the things that your body needs to move out, and however that looks is going to be great, and it might look beautiful and it might look ugly, and there's really no attachment to that. It's just what needs to come out.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think for our audience, they're probably used to hearing a lot about somatic work and somatic experiencing work. And I want to frame dance movement therapy as maybe a sibling to that type of work, as it's not the same, but it's really getting in there and doing a lot of that deep body work, a lot of that subconscious work. Would you
Absolutely.
agree with that?
Yep, definitely. There's a lot of overlap for sure.
Cool. What's something you've heard from a client who's worked with you for a while, who's maybe hesitant going into this, but then coming out of it and having worked with you, been like, oh my God, blank, blank, blank happened because of utilizing dance movement therapy?
Yeah. I have a client that I've been seeing for a while who came to me through another clinician who left. And so they were real hesitant to work with a dance therapist at all. And we started doing some body work about people pleasing and about not being able to hold boundaries. And as they started to notice the sensations in their body and were able to move through them and integrate them, they have been able to really step into their own. They hold boundaries, they make more time for themselves, and they just feel like a lot more empowered to make their own decisions. And I think that's been really beautiful work. And now they ask for somatic stuff as we go. So I think that's a big win.
Yeah, that's amazing. I personally always love the clients who are a little hesitant about like somatic work or dance movement work and then start asking for it. It's a real sign that it's really connected.
Absolutely. Same.
So dance movement therapy is definitely like a holistic approach, right? It's bringing in all the different parts of the self. How would somebody starting out in dance movement therapy, or how would you, as somebody starting out in dance movement therapy, help introduce it to them without them getting overwhelmed?
I start really small. I am a huge believer that everything we do is movement. Your breath is movement. The way that you hold your posture is movement. The way that you blink is movement. And so if we just start really internally, like even if we're listening to your heartbeat, that's a movement. Is your heart beating a lot faster? Is it slowing down? And using that those kinds of things as internal measures and just saying like, okay, see, your body's already moving. It's already doing the things. It's already telling you how it needs to move and how it's reacting. How can we engage that a little bit further? And it doesn't have to be this big extravagant thing. People are a little more used to, I'll say it, like interacting with their breath.
Yeah. And with those small starts, what do people start to notice? Like, what are you hoping that they'll start to connect to?
I feel like the biggest one that I hope they connect to is noticing they have a body at all. um,
It's amazing how much that is a thing.
It is. So a lot of times we'll start and like, okay, so like take a deep breath and like, where does that go? And like, I have no idea. Goes in through my nose and then, oh, okay. So maybe that's where we start. And sometimes it's just practicing, okay, can like we feel the breath going into your throat? Okay, that's a good start. How about into your chest? How about into your diaphragm? How about into your stomach? And just kind of noticing how all of these different pieces are connected. I don't believe that like the mind and body are two separate things, but I believe that they can speak two different languages. And so like kind of getting people to have the translation happen so they can talk to the whole being is really important.
As you're saying this, I have a client that just like flashes in front of me because when I first started working with her, as somebody who experienced a lot of trauma, she really struggled to even do that. Like that was completely overwhelming to be like below my throat. No, 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 that we don't go there. What do you see with your clients who get overwhelmed or maybe stop or can't connect to the body, even with those beginning um, exercises when there's trauma involved?
I believe that the body needs to be able to give consent to whatever we're going to be doing. So if we can't breathe into that, okay, like what does it feel like to like touch your own hand? What does it feel like to squeeze? Like can we do something that seems a little bit more external than it does like an internal experience and just see if we can get folks to connect in that way. And as they start to settle, like, okay, well, actually, I can take a deeper breath. I can feel some like tension in my shoulders. Okay, what does that need to do? And just go with what the body feels comfortable with expressing, and then they can take it from there.
Yeah. In working with consent, because I think a lot of therapists, especially if they're new to doing somatic work, get really excited because it as a therapy tool is really exciting. It's really interesting. There's a lot that the body knows and can help the person process through. Um, and we tend to conflate like helping push a client forward with pushing past consent of the body. How do you differentiate those two things?
I ask. I do a lot of permission asking in sessions when we're doing specifically somatic things. I ask, how is your body reacting to that? Does it feel like it's okay to go further? Can I push a little bit? And most after we've developed like a relationship, clients will say, yeah, you can push me, but I might say no. That's cool. I'm working at the pace of this. I think something that, uh, you know, as new therapists or newly practicing somatic therapists, you see how this works so quickly and so deeply that you're like, I just want to get in there and do the thing. But a person's nervous system needs to recalibrate when a big shift happens. And so if you go through and you like rip a big thing out and you're like, look at all this stuff, getting back from that dysregulation is really hard. And unless you've done all of the things to make sure that you can get back into regulation, then you're doing a lot more damage than you are doing and than you are helping. So I always tell my clients it's going to feel like it's like I'm going really slow, but you might notice really big changes off the bat, and all of that is by design.
Yeah, well said. I think it's really important for us working with clients who have a lot of trauma is to pay attention to to that consent and our desire to join the client. Because even though our intention might be to like join with them and help them, most of our clients, their consent has been trampled over time and time again, to the point where they may even say yes, like, but their body doesn't mean yes, and they may not have connection to that yes. So making sure, even if when they're saying yes, that their body posture and the things around them and their tone and everything is saying yes, not just I'm trying to make my therapist happy, I'm trying to do therapy right, so I'm going to say yes, we can go into this work.
Absolutely. And that comes from, and like noticing their breath and their tension and all of that. And then when I notice that there's a disconnect between those things, I'll be like, does your body feel tighter than when we started? And kind of helping them understand like where their actual yes and no is and what it feels like.
Yeah, because that yes and no, like everything else, lives in the body. And so helping them connect to that is also like a really great intro tool, intro goal as you're getting into this type of work. What other things do you see dance movement therapy and trauma engaging together? Like, in what ways has it been helpful, and in what ways does it freak a client out?
I can think of an example with a client who we wanted to do like a really basic somatic, like grounding something. And we were just starting with a breathing exercise, and they breathed into a part of their back that sent them into like a freak out. And we had to we had to stop for a minute and then figure out what that was. As we like slowed that down and like took our time to go through it, they were like, oh, like this is actually connected to this specific traumatic experience. And they came back the next week and they're like, I haven't been able to breathe this deeply in years, and I didn't realize that I couldn't breathe this deeply until we explored that. And then we stopped somatic work for a little bit because that needed to just be like integrated and like understand how their body could take in oxygen, and just kind of let that settle.
It's so interesting how with trauma, parts of the body just not only like shut down, but almost like calcify and like detach themselves or remove themselves from the rest of the system.
Yeah. And that shows up, like that shows up in actual physical things, right? Like there are so many somatic complaints that come with trauma, like sleep disturbances or chronic pain, or like all the systems in the body, gastrointestinal, cardiovascular, neurological, respiratory, like all of those things are affected by trauma. And sometimes we don't realize that that's what it is until we start moving around, and we don't realize that we're making adjustments in our life to account for those things until we start exploring how they've been removed, how they've been hardened.
Using this client as an example, what was it like for them to come back and be like, oh my God, I'm breathing, and then have you say, great, we're going to stay here for a while? And I'm guessing it wasn't just like 5 minutes, but it was like sessions of like, we're going to take time to regulate in this space and get you to this new baseline.
It was a little bit of disappointment that we couldn't do more, and a little bit of relief that we weren't gonna do more. They came in and like, so can we do more? And I was like, all right, let's talk about that for a minute. And they were like, no, that makes sense. That's probably good. I think I'm gonna enjoy breathing for a minute. And it's like, great, we're gonna enjoy breathing for a minute.
It's so important because in a lot of the trainings that, like any of the body-centered trainings that we'll go to, the trainers are giving a lot of information, right? And that's what we're going in, right? We're like, we need every minute of this training to be like giving me information. And then we forget that all of that information needs to be stretched over a big timeline when we're working with clients. And it's not like, great, every session we're going to go through and do all of these exercises, and then you're going to feel like this by the end of our 50 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm guilty of this as like a supervisor too. Like I'll go and I'm like, okay, so we're going to talk about this thing. I need this tool. Okay, here's this tool. Wait, hold on. I need this to be over like a 6-month period tool. This is not a one and done session kind of thing. Like this is how we space it out.
In working with trauma, what are some of the stages of healing that you'll see in whether that's body changes or how they're engaging with the world or how they're feeling about themselves? What are some of the big shifts?
I think the first one is like that awareness that it's there, right? The awareness that they hold their posture a certain way, that they breathe a certain way, that they have trouble making eye contact, that whatever that piece is. And then noticing how they can shift that. Like, is there something that feels stuck that if we move this certain way, if we comfort our body, if we integrate it in this way, that like I can shift that. And as they sort of practice that tool, then noticing that there is change that's happening, right? They need to use it less often. It feels more natural to be moving in this certain way. And I love it when I can see a client and they like no longer come in super hunched over, but they're like sitting up, or they actually like relax into the couch, or they don't have to be all like tense and crossed and all sorts of things. And that's often when they start to, say like, hey, I've actually been feeling a lot better. This was really easy for me to make this decision, or I stood up to this person and I held this boundary. And it all sort of like coalesces together.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
It does. It does. And I love how you're describing even like stood up to somebody as a body movement, right? And so I love how you're tracking not just the person's emotional experience, but also how their body is reflecting the person's growth. And like somebody who's like strong and self-actualized and has boundaries and is confident isn't hunched over and like scooting through a room. And we intrinsically know that, but it's really important for that to be something that you're tracking as you're going through this dance movement therapy work with a client. As we're coming to our last few minutes, what are some takeaways or some tips that you'd give people who are mostly like trauma professionals or people who are very interested in trauma, things that they can start doing to introduce themselves to dance movement therapy?
Let's see. I guess I can go both directions. Like I love a good body scan. Like I love that as like a beginning, even like a beginning to a session, right? It's like, okay, so we came in, like, how is your body feeling? What does it need? What did you bring in with you? Like your brain is often going a million miles a minute, but your body is usually holding like, this is the thing I actually need to talk about. So if we settle, can we talk about that? So like having a person ground in whatever way feels natural to you, and then starting from the top or starting from the bottom, depending on how you like to process. And then when you find a sensation, when it feels tight, like how can you move it? How do you need to breathe into it? And then, I find that a lot of times something just comes up from that. And then the other end of the spectrum, if you feel slightly less inhibited, at the end of a hard day, or at the end of, or if you have something that needs, it needs to get out. You need to shake it off. You need to do whatever. You're sad, you're angry, or you're happy. Throw on some music that matches your mood and like just dance around. That like dance around in the kitchen thing to your favorite music has a bunch of merit to it. The caveat is most people don't feel comfortable doing that with other people. So do it on your own. See how it feels. Be really interested to see how it goes.
Yeah, especially like not when you can do it alone, and I'm sure everybody knows this, but like just like that freedom that your body has to do what it wants is so rare, and we get it so infrequently. And there's so much that can come up in that, and imagery or thoughts, or where your brain goes, or how your body moves or doesn't move, or where pain shows up or doesn't show up is really powerful.
Yep. Don't ever force your body to move a way that it doesn't want to move. That's period. All the things, fitness, dancing, therapy, don't do it. Go with how it needs to go, and you might be surprised by the results.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. If any of you who are listening do any of these exercises, please let us know. You can comment on Guy's podcast below, or you can reach out to Kristen and I at social media at openspacetherapycollective.com. And we will hopefully see you soon. And
yeah, thank you so much.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
My name is Anais Plaskidis. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a supervisor at Brave Trails Mental Health Clinic. The most queer joy I've experienced recently is one of our cohorts of associate therapists graduating from our program. We're a virtual program, so we haven't ever met in person, and we got to go out and celebrate their graduation of working with queer youth after 2 years to karaoke and dinner, and it was so fun to just be and play and joy together.
Hey, I'm Joe. I go by he, him, and a queer moment of joy. I think knowing that instead of me choosing this lifestyle, I think I am happy knowing that I was chosen.
Thanks for joining us. If you're in California and looking for a therapist, visit our website at openspacetherapycollective.com and book a free intro call with one of our therapists. If you're enjoying My Therapist Is Out, please rate, review, and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Do you know somebody who could use a little extra dose of queer community? Send them one of your favorite episodes of My Therapist Is Out and help our collective grow one listen at a time. My Therapist Is Out is an open space therapy collective podcast, and our podcast editing is done by Rachel Peltzer and Smash and Grab Studio. We'd love to hear from you about today's topic, so email us at info@openspacetherapycollective.com. You can find us on TikTok and Instagram at Open Space Therapy Collective. Thanks for listening.